You were warned. The feed cut in without warning, hijacking every screen across Earth's networks, military channels, civilian broadcasts, even the deep space relay stations. The image was stark unfiltered, a row of human soldiers, stripped of their armor, kneeling on the cold, metallic floor of a Zanari execution platform. Their faces were bloodied but defiant. A towering figure in ornate warlord's regalia stepped forward. High Warlord Xoreth, the enforcer of the Galactic Council's will. His 4 yellow eyes glowed with satisfaction as he raised a clawed hand to address the galaxy. Let this be a lesson to the primitives of Sol. You have defied the order of the Galactic Council. You have spilled the blood of your betters. And now you will pay the price. The camera panned across the prisoners, 20 of them, some barely out of their teens, others hardened veterans of Earth's first interstellar war. One among them, Captain Elias Rains of the 7th Expeditionary Force, lifted his head, blood dripping from a gash on his brow. You think this will break us? Rains spat onto the ground. You think this will end us? Xoreth smirked, as if amused. He turned to the executioners, hulking, insectoid warriors of the Zanari Dominion, who leveled their plasma rifles at the prisoners. Humans are pests. Pests do not negotiate. Pests do not deserve mercy. The first shots rang out. One by one, the prisoners collapsed. Blood splattered across the cold metal. Some screamed. Some died silently, heads held high. The last to fall was Rains. He never looked away from the camera. And then the screen went black. Earth's response. For a moment, there was silence. Then, across every corner of human space, the silence broke. From the steel towers of Luna's military command centers to the underground bunkers of Mars, from the sprawling cities of Earth to the deep space colonies on Europa, a single message flooded every channel, every feed, every military encrypted network. They have broken the accords. They have broken their own laws. And now, they will reap the consequences. The Earth Unified Command convened within the hour. The President of the United Nations, flanked by the war-hardened admirals of the Sol Defense Fleet, addressed the planet in a single, unwavering statement. The Galactic Council has declared total war upon us. Let them tremble. Let them understand. We will show them what war truly is. Orbital shipyards switched to wartime production overnight. Every civilian industry was repurposed. Factories that once built colony transport ships now churned out war cruisers. AI-driven assembly lines produced kinetic bombardment munitions at an unprecedented rate. Cyber warfare teams unleashed chaos across the Council's networks, shutting down planetary defense systems before the first human fleet even left orbit. And in the shadows, the deadliest force humanity had ever created, the Special Operations Division, known as the Black Fangs, received their orders. Directive: extermination. The first shot. The first sign of humanity's retaliation came 48 hours after the execution. The Zanari's outermost colony, Taros 9, went silent. No distress calls. No life signs. Just a dead planet where a thriving population had once stood. The Council dismissed it at first, some technical failure and anomaly. Then, the second world went silent. And the third. And then, the Galactic Council received an encrypted transmission from Earth. Just 3 words. Total war begins. The first Zanari warship died in silence. A patrol cruiser, drifting at the edge of Council-controlled space, its sensors blind to the predator that stalked it. The human stealth frigate Nyx materialized from the void, its hull coated in a new form of adaptive camouflage, undetectable by conventional scans, invisible until it was too late. A single tungsten rod, fired at near-relativistic speeds, punched through the Zanari vessel's bridge, leaving nothing but a molten hole where its command crew once stood. No alarms. No distress calls. Just a drifting husk. By the time the Council realized what was happening, entire fleets were vanishing. The Black Fangs struck next. Zanari High Command had considered their fortress on Velkar Prime impenetrable, a world protected by orbital cannons, shielded fortresses, and entire regiments of Dominion shock troops. It took the Fangs less than 2 hours to turn it into a slaughterhouse. They breached the palace at midnight, moving like wraiths through the halls, silent and methodical. The first guards died before they even reached for their weapons. The last screams of the Dominion's warlords were broadcast across the Zanari homeworld, their executions displayed with cold precision. Throats slit, heads severed, a single message carved into the walls, written in blood. Debt paid in blood. More to come. The Galactic Council panicked. They had expected defiance from humanity, resistance even. What they had not expected was complete, calculated annihilation. The first battle fleets were scrambled, racing to reinforce the Dominion's core worlds. But they never reached their destinations. Entire Council convoys vanished en route, torn apart by human warships emerging from the void, striking and disappearing before retaliation could be mustered. Earth's new war doctrine was not conquest. It was extermination. They struck supply lines, leaving entire colonies to starve. They bombarded industrial worlds, shattering planetary infrastructure in days. Human cyber warfare divisions turned Council AI defenses against them, shutting down automated targeting systems, turning planetary shields into open beacons for incoming strikes. And then, when the terror had set in, Earth's war machine delivered its next message. A single Zanari warlord, captured during a Black Fong raid, was paraded before a human tribunal. He sneered at his captors, expecting some mockery of due process, some attempt at diplomacy. There was none. The trial lasted 3 minutes. The sentence was carried out immediately. His execution was broadcast across every Council-aligned world. But this time, there was no cruelty in the act. No gloating, no spectacle. Just a simple, ruthless statement before the trigger was pulled. You showed us no mercy. We will return the favor. The Council's Supreme Chancellor demanded negotiations. A peace summit. A chance to discuss terms before the war spiraled beyond control. Earth's response came in the form of a burning world. The Council's military command planet, Corthan 4, was reduced to glass in a single orbital bombardment. Millions dead in minutes. The capital incinerated, its surface boiling under the relentless barrage of kinetic strikes. Humanity did not respond to offers of peace. They only responded with fire. Across the galaxy, fear spread like wildfire. The same species that had once been dismissed as upstarts, as primitives unworthy of respect, had become a force beyond reckoning. And they had only just begun. The first refugee fleets were already fleeing when Earth's second wave of strikes began. Entire populations abandoning their homeworlds, hoping to escape the coming storm. There was nowhere to run. The war had changed. What had begun as a campaign of vengeance had become something far worse, a systematic dismantling of the Galactic Council's very existence. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were ensuring that no one would ever threaten them again. On the 4th day of the campaign, the world of Velcora Prime burned. It had once been a shining jewel of the Council, a seat of power where policy and war strategy had been decided. Now it was nothing but a smoldering ruin. Earth's warships had cut through its defenses like a blade through paper. The planetary shields, thought to be impenetrable, collapsed within hours under the relentless impact of tungsten rods and hypersonic missile barrages. Firestorms raged across the continents as human forces deployed precision orbital strikes, reducing entire cities to ash while carefully leaving only one thing intact: communication hubs. Humanity wanted the galaxy to watch. The Council's broadcasts had once been filled with messages of condemnation, of demands for surrender. Now, they were nothing but desperate cries for help from world after world as human forces swept through them with terrifying efficiency. Fleets that tried to resist were shattered. Ground forces were given no quarter. The very infrastructure that had kept the Council in power for centuries was being reduced to rubble before their eyes. And still, Earth's forces pressed forward. The Black Fangs struck deep behind enemy lines, dismantling supply chains, assassinating political and military leaders, turning the Council's own technology against them. Sabotaged warp gates collapsed in on themselves, cutting off retreat paths for entire fleets. False intelligence was fed to the Council's generals, leading them into ambush after ambush. The Dominion's elite warriors, the same ones who had executed human prisoners without hesitation, were now the ones kneeling before execution squads. Council worlds, once filled with arrogance and certainty, fell into chaos. Civilian leaders abandoned their people, fleeing into deep space in hopes of finding sanctuary beyond the reach of humanity's wrath. Some species, once loyal to the Council, began turning on each other in desperation, hoping to barter for their own survival. But Earth did not bargain. When the Council finally managed to gather its forces for a last-ditch counteroffensive, humanity welcomed the challenge. At Cape Zor 13, the largest battle in galactic history began. A desperate last stand by the Council's remaining fleets, throwing every warship they had left into the fray. Thousands of capital ships, tens of thousands of smaller vessels, all converging on one battlefield in an attempt to halt the onslaught. It did not matter. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this war. They had studied the Council's tactics, reverse-engineered their technology, trained for battles that no other species had ever dreamed of fighting. The sole defense fleet engaged with brutal precision, overwhelming the enemy with superior firepower, unmatched coordination, and an unrelenting refusal to retreat. In the end, the battlefield was nothing more than a graveyard of burning wreckage. The remnants of the Council's forces, broken and leaderless, fled into the void. Those who surrendered were met with silence. There would be no negotiations, no treaties. And then, the final message came, the last transmission from Earth to the shattered remains of the Council. You started this war. We will be the ones to end it. The galaxy had mocked humanity, had underestimated them. Now they would fear them. The battle was over before it began. The Galactic Council's armada stretched across the void, a last desperate defense against Earth's unstoppable war machine. Thousands of warships, dreadnoughts, carriers, entire battle groups gathered from the remains of the Council's fractured empire, had converged at Cape Zor 13, the last stronghold between humanity and total victory. They had assembled everything they had left, throwing every ounce of their remaining military strength into a single, decisive stand. The response from Earth had been simple. A single transmission, broadcast on every open frequency, cutting through the noise of fleet-wide communication. Good. All in one place. The first wave of human warships arrived like wraiths from the void, emerging from their stealth fields in perfect formation. They did not charge recklessly. They did not engage in drawn-out, grinding attrition. They executed. The kinetic strikes came first. Tungsten slugs fired at relativistic speeds, ripping through hulls like paper, turning warships into drifting, burning wreckage before their crews even realized they were under attack. Then came the cyber warfare assault. Every Council system flickered, crashed, turned against its own fleet. Targeting systems went dark. Shields collapsed. Ships drifted helplessly as human forces descended upon them with cold, unrelenting precision. Within the first 10 minutes, the Council lost a third of its fleet. Their admirals barked orders, demanding countermeasures, demanding a formation, demanding anything that could turn the tide. It was already too late. Then the Ragnarok-class warships arrived. The Council had dismissed Earth's capabilities before. They had assumed that no Deathworlder species could ever match the technological might of civilizations that had ruled the stars for millennia. They had been wrong. The Ragnarok-class vessels, massive, AI-driven behemoths, moved with a purpose beyond human limitations. Each one was a city-sized warship, bristling with experimental weaponry capable of erasing fleets in a single barrage. The first Ragnarok fired. A pulse of energy rippled through the battlefield, collapsing entire formations of Council ships, tearing them apart at the molecular level. No explosion, no debris, just silence. Panic spread through the Council's remaining forces. Some captains turned and ran, activating their warp drives in blind desperation. Others tried to surrender, opening hailing frequencies, begging for mercy. None was given. Humanity's orders were clear. Leave none standing. The battle lasted less than an hour. By the time the last Council dreadnought fell, the void was filled with the wreckage of 1,000 burning ships, the shattered remnants of an empire that had once considered itself invincible. The once mighty Galactic Council no longer had a fleet, no longer had an army, no longer had the power to enforce its rule. Then the final strike began. Human dropships descended upon K-Zor 13 surface, deploying orbital bombardments that turned its defenses to dust before the first boots even hit the ground. Black Fang operatives moved through the ruins like ghosts, executing every remaining high-ranking officer. There would be no tribunals, no trials, no second chances. The last survivors, a handful of desperate Council senators, were found cowering in an underground bunker, surrounded by what remained of their guards. They begged for negotiation, for the chance to discuss terms. A single Black Fang operative, face hidden behind a dark visor, stepped forward. He held up a holopad, displaying the footage of the human prisoners executed at the war's beginning. The message was clear. There would be no peace. The executions were swift. As the last Council leader's body hit the floor, the Black Fang operatives sent one final transmission back to Earth. Objective complete. The Council is no more. For the first time in galactic history, the Council's seat of power lay in ruin. The last defenders of the old order had been wiped from existence, and humanity was just getting started. The war was won, but humanity was not finished. The destruction of K-Zor 13 had shattered the Galactic Council, reduced its fleets to burning wreckage, and left its worlds defenseless. Their leaders were dead. Their armies were gone. The few remaining species that had once ruled the stars were now scattered, leaderless, and afraid. But Earth did not stop. There was no peace treaty, no negotiations, no rebuilding efforts for the enemy. Only one directive remained: extermination. The first target was the Zanari homeworld. Once the proud heart of the Dominion, it had stood for centuries as an impenetrable bastion, its rings of orbital defenses ensuring that no enemy could ever breach its skies. Those defenses had already been sabotaged. The Black Fangs had planted virus clusters in their systems long before the war had even begun, waiting for the right moment. When the human fleet arrived, the planetary shields collapsed without a shot fired. The defense cannons turned inward, firing upon their own cities before self-destructing. And then the bombardment began. Tens of thousands of kinetic warheads rained down, turning entire continents into craters. The oceans boiled, choked with debris. The once great cities of the Zanari burned in the darkness, their screams lost to the void as Earth's warships circled like vultures, watching, waiting, ensuring that nothing escaped. Within a single Earth day, the Zanari species was no more. Across the galaxy, the remaining member species of the Council faced the same fate. Some tried to flee. Human hunter-killer squadrons tracked them down, wiping out refugee fleets before they could even break orbit. Others tried to hide, retreating to remote colonies in the farthest reaches of space. The Black Fangs found them all, planet by planet, system by system. No warnings, no mercy. The broadcasts from Earth were simple and unchanging. You executed our people. You called for our extinction. Now we answer. Some humans began to question the cost of victory. The war had begun as vengeance for their fallen. Now it was something else, a cleansing, A purge. The complete eradication of species that had once stood against them. There were voices within Earth's leadership that whispered of restraint, of ending the war now, that humanity had won. But those voices were drowned out by the weight of history. The Council had tried to wipe humanity from existence. They had failed. Now, humanity would make sure no enemy would ever rise against them again. And yet, as the last flames consumed the remnants of the once mighty Council, a message arrived. It was not from the few surviving species still cowering in the depths of space. It was something older, something watching. A single transmission broadcast across every human channel. A voice that spoke not in words, but in something deeper, primal, ancient, and laced with quiet, undeniable power. You have proven yourselves. But if you continue on this path, you will not be the only Deathworlders to exist. For the first time since the war began, humanity paused. They had burned the old order to the ground. They had made the galaxy tremble. But now, something far older had taken notice. Something that had been waiting. Something that was watching what humanity would become. The galaxy was silent. The war was over. The Galactic Council no longer existed. Its fleets lay in ruin. Its worlds turned to dust. Its people wiped from history. Humanity had won. And yet, as Earth's warships patrolled the empty void, scanning the remnants of what had once been their greatest enemy, something new appeared on the edges of known space. Something that had not moved in eons. The Void Lords had returned. The first sighting was on the outskirts of the Perseus Arm, where a human reconnaissance fleet had been hunting down the last survivors of the Council's elite warlords. They never sent a distress call. Their transmissions simply stopped. A second fleet, dispatched to investigate, found only wreckage. No bodies. No enemy vessels. Just drifting hulks, their hulls untouched by weapons fire. Their systems fried beyond recovery. The flagship's final data logs contained only static until the last recorded second. A voice. You have burned the old order. Now, we will see what rises from the ashes. Then nothing. For the first time since the war began, Earth hesitated. The Supreme Admiralty convened, scrambling to assess the threat. Humanity had spent years fighting against the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known, and had crushed it. Yet whatever this was, it was something else entirely. The answer came soon after. From the dark void beyond the galactic rim, a fleet emerged. Not from known space. Not from any empire that had ever been recorded. Their ships were monolithic, vast constructs of impossible geometry, their surfaces shifting and writhing as if space itself was rejecting them. They moved without detectable propulsion, without heat signatures, without anything that could be classified by human understanding. They did not fire weapons. They did not issue demands. They simply arrived. The first human warships to engage them disappeared. Not destroyed. Not defeated. Simply gone. Their matter erased. Their existence undone, as though they had never been. Panic spread through the Soul Defense Network. Humanity, for all its overwhelming firepower, for all its victories, had finally encountered something beyond its control. And then the Void Lord spoke. A single transmission, broadcast across every human channel, every ship, every colony, every corner of their rapidly expanding empire. You stand at the precipice of something greater than war. You have chosen the path of annihilation, and you have proven yourselves worthy of it. But if you continue down this path, you will not be alone for long. Others will follow. Others will rise. You are not the first to burn the stars. You will not be the last. The meaning was clear. Humanity had shattered the old order, and in doing so, had sent a message to the cosmos itself. Others, hidden, waiting, watching, now knew what Deathworlders were capable of. The balance had shifted. The age of council rule had ended, but something else was coming. The question was no longer whether humanity could win a war. The question was whether they could survive what came next. The President of Earth stood before the global assembly, watching as the Void Lord ships slowly retreated into the abyss. The war had been won, but the future was no longer theirs alone. "We were never meant to be conquerors," she said, voice heavy with the weight of what had been done. "But now, we have no choice." The war had ended, but humanity's real battle had only just begun.